There's a war happening right now in the Middle East. And while everyone's watching the bombs, the real question nobody is asking is this: which economy dies first? Because this war didn't just hit Iran. It hit oil markets. It hit supply chains. It hit currencies. And right now, today, there are governments, central banks, and entire economies fighting to survive what Trump started on February 28th. So we're going to run the list, contestant by contestant, economy by economy. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly who gets eliminated first, and who, against all odds. Before we start eliminating contestants, let's set the stage. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched surprise airstrikes on Iran. Supreme Leader Khamenei was assassinated. Dozens of top officials killed. Iran retaliated immediately, and then they did something nobody fully anticipated. They closed the Strait of Hormuz. That's 20% of the world's entire oil supply. Gone. Overnight. The International Energy Agency called it, and I'm quoting directly here, the greatest global energy security challenge in history. Brent crude went from $70 to $95 a barrel in days. The IMF started warning about a possible global recession. And as of today, the ceasefire expires this Wednesday. The second round of talks in Islamabad collapsed, and the US just seized an Iranian cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. This is not over, not even close. So the question is, who's already down? Who's bleeding out? And who's quietly cashing in while everyone else burns? Let's find out. Let's start with the economy that officially broke first. The Philippines imports 98% of its oil from the Middle East. When the Strait closed, they didn't have weeks of reserves. They had days. On March 24th, President Marcos declared a national energy emergency. The Philippine peso hit a record low, 60.1 pesos per US dollar. They became the first country in the world to formally declare an energy crisis from this war. First contestant, eliminated. Now, you might think Iraq, an oil producer, would be fine. Wrong. Since the war started, oil production in southern Iraq dropped by more than 70%. The Zubair oil field in Basra, which produced 400,000 barrels per day, is now producing just 250,000 because of continuous Iranian strikes on the region. Here's the brutal part. 90% of Iraq's GDP comes from oil exports. The volume of imported goods reaching Iraqi ports has been cut in half. Iraq is hemorrhaging. Eliminated. We're going to group these three together because they're telling the same story. Bangladesh is projected to fall into recession-like conditions. Myanmar is restricting private vehicles to alternate days. You can only drive every other day. Sri Lanka raised fuel prices by 8% overnight, on top of an already fragile economy. These are the countries the World Economic Forum is warning about. Less wealthy, food and fuel importing nations facing acute stress. They didn't start this war, but they're already paying the price. Eliminated. Europe looked at this war and thought, we'll be fine. We diversified our energy after Russia. They were wrong. Just less wrong than everyone else. Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom are all now at high risk of recession, according to current forecasts. Here's the mechanism. Higher oil prices mean higher inflation. Higher inflation means central banks can't cut interest rates. No rate cuts means the economy stays squeezed. And squeezed economies, with tight budgets and high debt, start breaking. Economists in countries as far as Chile and Poland are scaling back rate cut expectations because of what's happening in a strait they've never even driven near. Europe is still standing, but it's bleeding. Danger zone. India is the interesting case, and a dangerous one. India has thin strategic reserves and a heavy reliance on Middle Eastern crude. Higher energy prices are feeding directly into inflation, weakening the rupee and threatening growth. But here's the twist. The US Treasury gave India an emergency waiver to buy stranded Russian oil on March 6th to stabilize domestic fuel prices. So, India is buying Russian oil, discounted, sanctioned, with Washington's blessing, because Washington has no other choice. India is still standing, but dependent on a workaround that could disappear tomorrow. Danger zone. Now, here's where this gets uncomfortable. Because there were two contestants that didn't just survive this war. They're thriving. And one of them is supposed to be our enemy. In February 2026, the month before this war, Russia was on the ropes. Real GDP had contracted. Oil export revenues had fallen to their lowest level since the Ukraine invasion. Russian Urals crude was trading in the low 70s a barrel. Putin was about to make painful spending cuts. The sanctions were working. Then, Trump bombed Iran. Overnight, Russia's Urals crude surged to $100.67 a barrel. At one point, trading $12 above Brent, the global benchmark. The Financial Times estimated Russia was earning up to $150 million a day in extra budget revenue from oil sales alone. The KSE Institute projected Russia could receive between $45 billion and $151 billion in additional budget revenues in 2026, depending on how long this war lasts. In the central scenario, 3 months of war, that's $161 billion in extra export revenues. Roughly $500 million per day. And here's the part that makes this even more extraordinary. The United States, the country that started the war, was forced to temporarily waive its own sanctions on Russian oil just to keep energy prices from crushing American consumers at the pump. Putin didn't fire a single missile at Iran. He didn't need to. Trump did it for him. This one is more subtle, but potentially more dangerous long term. North Korea is watching this war very carefully, and what they see is simple. Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon. Iran got bombed. North Korea has nuclear weapons. North Korea doesn't get bombed. Analysts at Eagle Intelligence Reports argued that this war has reinforced North Korea's nuclear deterrence calculus. Pyongyang is now interpreting the military action against a non-nuclear Iran as strategic validation of its own weapons program. The lesson Pyongyang took from February 28th is this: nuclear weapons aren't just weapons. They're survival insurance. And denuclearization talks are now, quote, almost unimaginable in the foreseeable future. North Korea didn't win any money from this war, but they won something more valuable: confirmation that their strategy is correct. So let's recap the scoreboard. Eliminated: the Philippines, Iraq, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Sri Lanka. In the danger zone, Europe, India, and most of the global south. Surviving against all logic, Russia, North Korea, and the United States. America won the military engagement. Khomeini is dead. Iran's military is in ruins. The mission technically worked. But here's what the scoreboard doesn't show. The US is now running a war it can't fully control. The ceasefire expires this Wednesday. Iran isn't showing up to talks. And every day the Strait stays disrupted, Russia collects another $500 million. The World Economic Forum put it plainly. This is not only a regional crisis. It is a structural shock to the world economy, delivered at a moment of geoeconomic fragility. The longer it runs, the more lasting the damage becomes. And right now, as of today, the ceasefire expires in 48 hours. The second round of talks has no confirmed date. And a US Navy ship just seized an Iranian cargo vessel in the Gulf of Oman. The game isn't over. We don't know who dies next. But now, at least, you know how to read the board.
If this video changed how you see this war, subscribe, because next week we go even deeper. We're going to look at what happens to global markets if the ceasefire breaks down completely. Oil at $120, Europe in stagflation, and a US economy heading into midterms. That video drops next week. Don't miss it. And if you want to stay ahead of what's happening in global finance and geopolitics, the link to the weekly briefing is in the description below. This is Covert Economics. We decode power and money. I'll see you in the next one.